Okay, welcome all. This brings to order the Zoning Board of Appeals, Southampton, public hearing, October 24th, 2019. I would like to introduce to interested parties Julia McCormick, our new member of the Zoning Board. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. I would like now to switch down to the bottom to additional, where we have some information as to what this is referring to.
In regard to case number 3043, Michael and Sylvia Rutherford, 33 Layton Avenue. When we wrote the decision, we had the setback from Layton Avenue of 27.7 feet to the dormer. It should be 29.2 feet, so I move that we change that in our decision to 29.2 feet in lieu of 27.7 feet.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have any info on Captain's Neck?
No, I don't know what that's doing there.
Okay,
DEC.
right. So we'll just shine it on. There are no pending decisions. There are pending cases. 303, oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, can I have a motion to adjourn 3054 as they have requested?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Can I have a similar motion to adjourn 3055 as they have requested?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Pending cases,
We
30,
got 3037 too.
30 who?
3037 and 3045.
Well, I don't know.
Oh,
I
you're
like
right,
to
you're right,
call
you're
them
right,
and
you're
see
right.
what the story is.
We don't
Right.
have to call them to adjourn because they're before another board.
Sometimes people have something to say relative to those cases
Yeah.
anyway. All right, pending cases, number 3036, the Stones.
The application, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. As you know, this case has been on the agenda for quite some time, and it was fairly recently that I was asked to get involved in it, so that's why I'm here this evening. I intend to be very brief because I don't have anything new to submit, except for the fact that earlier today I did submit a legal memorandum that was prepared by Nika Strunk's office in connection with our office, raising some legal points regarding the application. I will also say that First Coastal is working on an additional environmental report, which we would plan to have to you before the work session in November. And as an aside, Aram Tertunian, who's the principal of that company, couldn't be here tonight anyway, so I really don't have anything else to say other than to make sure that you do look at the memorandum that was submitted today. I know you haven't looked at it, and that you'll have an opportunity to review the environmental report that's submitted before your work session. So with that in hand, I would mainly wanted to let you know that the application is still alive. That's my main purpose for being here. It was a bit moribund, but it's back on track. So with that, I would ask that you adjourn for all purposes to the November meeting.
Is there a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
Anybody from the public?
Oh, sorry, anybody from the public want to speak to this issue? Anybody else from the board?
No.
Attorneys? May I
I move we adjourn this case for all purposes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye.
Thank you.
Excuse me, on which issue was that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
That was 3036, the Stones.
It's me. I'm a neighbor.
Ah, can we have a motion to
So do you want to give her a chance to?
reopen the adjourned?
Move reopen for comments from the floor.
For a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes,
Aye.
ma'am. Please approach the,
I'd like to
please,
know what's...
excuse me, please approach the desk and introduce yourself. We'd like to know who you are.
I'm Mrs. Herford.
Okay. You may proceed.
I'd like to know what went on, what he proposed, what he talked about.
He hasn't, he didn't.
didn't.
He just got
Is he
involved in the
going to?
case recently. He summarized his appearance here as saying he just wanted us to know that the case is alive and he's on it and working on it. And
The
he-
case has been postponed 3 times at least, and I drove out here for it. because Diane didn't call me it off. She didn't call it off.
You know what the case, what they want? You know,
Wow.
you know what the variance, you know what they're asking for?
A new wall, she said. Yeah.
New wall.
Yeah, you understand that, right? Okay,
Yeah, the wall is next to me. I know it very well.
okay.
Okay, well, would you like to tell us how you feel about it?
We need a wall, absolutely. We had a wall for 100 years, and now the wall collapsed.
Yes,
The wall is 100 years old.
yes.
Do you know how that wall looks on his side, how it's crumbling?
We have seen pictures.
Yes, in fact,
Some of us have visited the site.
yeah. And the wall fell even more.
Yes. You
You know
said
that.
we need the wall.
Pardon me?
You said we need the wall.
But I heard today my insurance company is paying for it. I found out, which I'm disgusted. And they claim that he's only intending to replace half the wall. Is anybody aware of that?
Yeah, pretty much.
I can answer that, I think.
Would be nice.
Sure.
Would be nice to inform me. I'm a neighbor.
You were
Am I
informed.
entitled to?
You were, received a notice when the
I
application was
didn't.
originally filed.
Please
I didn't
address,
file it.
please
I-
address the board.
I didn't file the
Please.
application, I've just been recently involved. But the proposal is to replace only the part of the wall that is collapsed, and it's designed to, the exterior appearance will match what was there before, same height, same
What's going to
appearance.
happen if the rest of the wall falls in 5 years?
We'll have to deal with that
No,
then.
I'm not going to deal
Well,
with it.
that-
We
that's
deal
not
with it
before this,
now.
that's not before this
More,
board.
are you aware that more of the wall fell?
Ma'am, please address the board.
I'm not prepared to go into anything
Ah.
further than I went this evening. You had expressed some concerns, I think the consultant expressed some concerns with doing some of the work to the wall that's within the wetlands area. And as a result, we have scaled back the application so as not to touch that part, the part that's still standing. We don't intend to touch that until it needs to be touched.
Less is standing than 4 weeks ago.
Please address the board.
I have never done this. I'm sorry.
You never addressed the board.
I never had
They're
an
they're
issue
going to be
like this.
back next month, and they're going to be bringing their environmentalists with them and their people. And I would suggest that you come to next month's meeting where this case
Are
will
you sure
be
it's going
talked
to happen
about.
next month?
Excuse me?
They might postpone it again,
Right.
Am I?
really.
You can
I'm
call, you
driving
can
out for it.
call the building department.
Yeah, before you come out, call the building department and see if it's been adjourned.
I called Diane today, twice,
Okay.
and she didn't call it off.
It's not off.
It's
It
not
wasn't
off.
off.
didn't adjourn.
The
We
presentation
didn't
was
adjourn.
made, but not at length. And can I ask are you to the west of this property? And your insurance company has to pay, you said?
That's what they pushed for.
They had the fill on her property, which is supposed to
The
be...
fill I was allowed to
would
have.
cause the wall to
Okay.
be pushed over.
Well, that's another issue. We probably,
H, it's H. You
Well-
see the aging on the stucco, it's crumbling.
yeah. Okay. So we will going to take another vote to adjourn this hearing at this point. If you would like to make some points, now is your chance.
I'd like to have my landscaping restored, naturally. Whatever is, there's
That
some
was
trees,
disturbed, yeah?
whatever is fell over. I mean, some of them are suffering because the water went to the other side. But that has to be brought back to, and the height, I'd like to know the height,
The same height as was there before,
the same height.
same height,
The front was higher, then it sloped down to the back.
same height.
Please
that was
address
there
the board.
The same height that was there before, bearing in mind that this wall was built during the First World War.
Yes, 100 years
So
ago,
we
that's
we
right.
intend to put it back the way it was. But I want to bring in some expert testimony, as I mentioned to you. I've been recently retained, and I think
If
I'm
that-
entitled to
if
the
that
right. I think
wall
I'm,
would have-
excuse me, I think I'm entitled to the right to an adjournment and to address the board more fully at the next meeting.
Well,
If
I
that
tend to
wall would
agree.
have
What do you
been
think,
maintained
Yeah,
for the last 50 years, it would have not collapsed.
if what happened?
The water is half of the property. The water is this much on the wall. The water, I was going to take more pictures, but I couldn't go around it. The water is this much, 2 feet. The wall is in the water. Is that normal for a wall? That's how the wall is made to last? I doubt it.
And the part that's in the water actually is the part that didn't fail.
It lasted 100 years.
It
It's been
failed now. It failed now. You should go back. It failed
I would
now.
like
Well,
to
it is
have this
not,
vote for an
it
adjournment.
is not really in our purview to say why the wall failed, but I don't think. We just want to know if the wall should be rebuilt.
And we also want to know that the new wall, when it's built, would be a stable wall.
A what?
That a stable wall. We don't want a wall to go in the same as the wall that's there if it's just going to fall over again.
We'll be prepared to address that, and that's part of what I want to have the environmental consultant here for.
Wouldn't he be allowed to put a little bit some strength against that wall?
Well, that's why they have environmental consultants and engineers that come in and bring,
Global warming is taking place. The ocean, the bay is rising. We know that. I hope. We're not in denial.
You asking me, or what?
I'm asking
We're not going to take a vote on a question.
everybody.
I think.
That's what I mean. We have to put a little bit something to make it stable, no?
We intend to make it stable.
We're having some
Okay.
experts.
they
look
will
at
have
the wall.
plans that you'll be able to review.
So far, I haven't heard anything.
Ma'am, there's plans available in the building department's office that you'd be more than,
I got-
more than able to review.
I got some plans, yeah.
They should be able to
That's it. I
provide
don't- I
copies.
don't know what it
for you.
means.
Okay.
Just let it go.
Well, you might find somebody who knows what it means.
Oh, really? But I don't like the exterior. I don't like slated wood.
Oh, slated wood.
Have a stucco exterior and a...
No, it
terracotta.
doesn't on this picture here.
Well, that's an older plan
That's
that
an
you're looking
older-
at.
oh.
That's an older plan.
Can I have
That's why
an
said we're
updated
coming
one?
back.
There's a new plan. If you
When it
come
moves,
next month,
it's
you'll hear their new
developed. It'll be
plan.
there. It'll be
If there's any
submitted.
Would
changes
it be
to it.
nice to have an updated one? But nobody keeps
You'll hear the
me.
engineer, you'll hear the environmental planner.
That's why I requested an adjournment to come back and provide that information and to give you a chance to review the memo that was submitted.
While you're here, ma'am, I suggest you go up to the building department
I
and
have been there today.
have you express your concern
You better believe it.
and ask them how you can better access the information.
Access to information. No, I didn't ask that, and I liked them to make sure I have information. I'm not going to chase the information. The information should be given to me.
Be up in the building office.
I went up there and they give me
Well,
these.
there's going to be new plans after
They
we
gave
give
me
you
these.
new information next month.
The attorney for the applicant is, I don't think, under any obligation to
No,
provide you.
somebody, who is under the obligation?
Building department might be the way to
They
go.
have to send it to me?
No, they
No,
don't have
ma'am.
Go
to.
look it up.
Yeah, but I went there
It's
today
free
and
for
they
you,
gave me
it's for you,
this.
it's free for you to look at the building department,
Give me
but,
that.
so you can go to the building department anytime to look at the folder.
Means I should go there every week?
If you like,
Or you can call and check in with them if there's been anything extra filed. The notice you received by mail makes you aware of the application. To keep up with that, yes, you will
I'm
have
out of town
to,
too
you will have to
sometimes.
check
I'm
with the
away,
building
you know,
department
I'm not chasing these.
to look for plans.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
It doesn't sound as if any of the comments I've heard are inconsistent with what we're going to be doing. So I think you'll probably wind up, everything you've said, I think is what we're going to be doing.
The height is going to be as it was.
The
yeah.
height is
Yeah,
as it was.
yeah,
The exterior is going to be stucco and terracotta, the way it
yeah. And
was.
the tile on top like it was,
Yeah, the terracotta tile.
tile.
And it's going to be structurally stable. All of the things that
And-
you're concerned, I think we'll address all those concerns.
and that wall lasted 100 years or World War I, and so let the other one might
Well, none
last
of us will be
50 or
around.
60. so-
But like I said, more of the wall collapsed.
Sorry?
There's not much more standing of the wall. More collapsed.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Take a look at it, but
It's not far away from the end, but standing, it's maybe from there to there.
Yeah, check maybe to review that wall. Have you taken a look at it, see if any other damage,
I have not recently. I've been to the site on 2 prior occasions and had evaluated it then. But I think in view of new information coming in, we'll certainly do another inspection.
I wasn't here for 3 weeks, that's why I didn't see it, but it's voiced down now.
Well, we welcome your input.
All right. I'd just like to have my landscaping brought back to,
Okay,
it shouldn't be a problem, yeah.
that is heard.
Rest of adjournment.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Okay. Now, is anyone here to respond to case number 3037? Lifton Green? I understand they have new representation. Is that right? Oh, here you are.
Correct.
My name is Andrew Goldstein from Ackerman, Packman, Brown, and Goldstein in Hampton. Linda Margolin Sunder is, we are recently appointed as counsel, and we are asking for an adjournment. I think we sent in a letter requesting.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Letter in the file.
They emailed a letter in today to,
Oh, okay. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Moving on, that, right back.
Case number 3045, Meredith Joyce Trust. Is there anyone here to explain the process?
Yep, for the applicant, John Bennett and Reed. You'll remember this is the parcel on Hill Street where there were two buildings, with the one old Bartlett tree care building and then what was an antique shop. And the tree care building was taken down, and we have an application similar to applications that have been granted in the past to take that antique shop, make it a guest house or an apartment, at your board's discretion, obviously, and to construct a traditional-sized single-family residence on the back of the parcel. One of the things that you've been waiting for is an advisory report from the Architectural Review Board. I'm at a loss to understand why you don't have it. I mean, it's not your board's doing, but I think it's been pending for probably, I think you've been waiting it for about 2 to 3 months now. So I would just maybe if you could write a letter or at the board's request, or maybe the board just make an inquiry to the Architectural Review Board where the advisory report is. We're operating under procedure that requires, prior to action of this board, the Architectural Review Board to give in effect an advisory opinion. I can tell you generally what they said and what I expect to be in the opinion, but of course it's subject to receiving the actual written opinion. We had a couple different concepts. One was to leave the frame building where it was. The other one was to relocate it, and the other one was to keep it in generally the same area, but move it back 20 feet from the road. The colloquy at the ARB was that they wanted the building left where it was, but in terms of its east-west orientation, but moved back 20 feet because the building right now is literally on the line, and someone had some years ago driven through the porch, so it's very close to the line. So the discussion at the board probably 6 weeks ago, don't hold me to the exact date, was that they would be supportive of the application. Of course, you have to wait to hear this. Supportive of the application with the rear of the structure removed because it's not very valuable, but the structure as a whole, to the primary part of the structure, remain where it is on an east-west axis, but be moved back 20 feet. So the reason I bring that up is because originally the plan was to move the house back 30 feet. So I'm just letting you know that I'll be asking for the matter to be renoticed for a 20-foot as opposed to a 30-foot setback.
So more time.
Yeah, more time, but maybe if someone could just gently or gingerly or with whatever.
Whom does one address these
Ask the
days?
ARB what they're doing.
Who's the chair of the ARB this week?
I don't know, I'd have to look. I think it's still Susan Stevenson.
All right, thank you.
This week. Yeah, and again, you can say yes or no, but it'd be nice if maybe someone even just picked up a phone and asked them where they are with the report. I didn't think they were generally supportive of the concept, but they have to give you a report, so you really can't take any action until then. Okay. Thank you.
does their plan show it at 20 feet? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and originally, we were going to, 30 feet, we knew there would be a negotiation, but I think the notice before this board says 30, so I'm just...
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that whatever report they have reflects the most.
We gave them 3 options: leave it where it is,
Okay.
move it to the center and move it back, or leave it where it is and move it back. So they chose to, they have all the options, so.
Thank you.
I'm going to read those, but thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn this for all purposes? I'm sorry, is there any public input? We have a motion to adjourn for all purposes.
I move we adjourn this application for all purposes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Number 3049, BLC Hillside, 132 South Main.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Timothy S. McCully, 41 Meeting House Lane, Southampton, for the applicant. You may recall we were here on August the 22nd, and I explained what the application was. We're moving a pool house and a garage to a more conforming location. The board had some questions and wanted some information. They wanted to see a vote for the tennis court to show that it was existing at the time. The lot line modification, which was approved by the planning board in 2018, was there. I've shown you proof of that. Wayne asked for a 2007 map for the full size of the subdivision. I've given you that. Copy of the declarations that went along with the lot line modification in 2018. I've supplied that. Viewscapes of the garage at 21 feet and 30 feet. Single and separate surveys of each lot instead of the overall, which had been submitted earlier with the application. Gave you plans from 1988 for the garage and the pool house. Copies of the deeds. I think one of the disclosure affidavits was missing. I supplied that. Additional copies of the plans with the dimensions called out. I supplied that. And the new surveys to include a better delineation of the gazebo between the two parts of the pool house, which I believe is called out more clearly for you. Basically, we have a garage now that's actually over the line onto the flagpole for the back lot of this 2-lot subdivision. We want to move it onto the front lot. It'll be 21 feet instead of the required 30. Right now, it's 10 feet from the church, from St. John's Episcopal Church property. It'll be over 40 feet if we're allowed to move it. We're going to reorient the pool. With the pool is 15 feet from the property line. It will be in a conforming location, 30 feet away. We're going to reorient the pool house. Right now, it's 17 feet to the south line, and it will wind up 20 feet. And as I explained before, we also have an application pending before the planning board, which is due for a public hearing on November 4th. And eventually, going through all the steps on that, if we get approved on that, everything that we're proposing here will be conforming to the size of the lot. So that's basically the application. I would ask that Ms. McCormick, if you would, review the tape from the 22nd of August so that you're up to speed on what I presented that night. It starts at the 42-minute mark on there, so you don't have to go through everything else. I have the architect here again if you still have questions.
My question centers around the process of the planning board. My question would be, should we wait until the planning board makes its decision?
Well, here's the problem with that. We're trying to expedite this, and keep in mind, what we're doing is making everything more conforming. And under the code, a non-conforming building being used for a conforming purpose can be altered, it can be reconstructed, et cetera. We're doing more than that. We're getting this stuff more conforming. Yes. The problem with waiting for the subdivision to occur, okay, is we have to go through the planning process, we have to go through the health department process, and it may be, and we're not sure that we'll even be approved at the end.
By the planning board?
Yes. I mean, I'm assuming we probably will be, based upon the work sessions that we've had, but I can't guarantee that, and so, and
If it's
as
not
I,
approved by the planning board, then you would need the variance for the pool house, but the garage would not need a variance?
no, I would need a
That would-
variance, because it's only 21 feet
All right,
from
but
the
if
side
it
yard.
goes to the planning board, both the garage and the pool house would then be conforming?
Correct.
I want to make sure I had that. That's what
Yes,
I,
because the lot gets smaller and under the code, it's all based
Setbacks
upon
change,
that.
yeah.
Right. So that's where we are. But as I told you on the 22nd, you have to look at this not based upon what might happen, but what is.
right.
That's,
So if we give you a variance, you can move ahead. If the
Yes.
planning board changes it, the variance becomes moot.
exactly.
Right, and the question is, as proposed, does it meet the criteria? To meet the variance criteria?
Yes.
Regardless of what the planning board will do? It's a question for the,
Yes.
is
Well, yeah,
to weigh it with no regard for what planning is going to do
Right.
with the
The
subdivision.
variances that I'm asking for would be what would be necessary if we don't get the subdivision. And the ground floor area, I'm sorry, the lot coverage, GFA, everything will comply no matter which way the lot gets configured.
So there's no big contingency at all?
Pardon me?
There's no contingency that would undo our work?
No. No.
So if you get the okay from the planning board, then the 30 feet becomes 20 feet,
Exactly.
and the 21 feet.
Right, and then we would be in conformity.
We conform completely.
And what this does too is, just to refresh your recollection, if you remember, the lot line modification was done in 2018, which cut off a piece of the back lot and gave it to the people in Toilsome. And as part of that declaration from 2007, as amended in 2018, required that if we sell off the back lot, we have to move this garage out of that driveway, which we're trying to do now. And we have the client has no intention of selling off the back lot, but we're trying to make everything more conforming.
I think the only thing that I'm clear on that, and I don't personally have a problem with that, but on the building that you're moving, which is a pre-existing non-conforming size, it's
Right.
larger than an accessory building would be allowed to be built today.
Yep,
We're moving it, so it'll be in a new location, but we're not only moving it, we're renovating it, and we're adding things inside this garage barn that previously weren't in that garage barn, and I don't know if that's expanding or non-conforming.
Well, I know the prior certificate of occupancy, I think, said no habitable space or no
we're not
living.
we don't have.
As long as they're staying compliant with the certificate of occupancy for that building, they can move it, and the board can
But
approve
that's
them
what
to move
from the
it.
plan that I see, I don't know if that's the case.
Well, here's what I would say to you in answer to that. The fact that we're putting a bathroom in the back corner and putting demising walls in the middle of the building does not change the use. I spoke with Chris Talbot, and he said it doesn't, it's still a garage. A garage is a garage.
See, that's where I'm having a significant problem. I mean, you actually note on the plans garage as part of this, but you also add playroom, utility storage.
It's got a bathroom, it's got a laundry room, it's got a room that could be a gym, but you put a bed in and it's a bedroom. Now it's not, now it's living space, and that's,
The concern I have is this no longer looks like a garage.
I know, the only thing I can say to you is it doesn't change the use based upon my conversation with Chris Talbot. If you'd like to get his input on that, that would be fine. But I'm just saying that that doesn't change the use as a garage. And I specifically asked him about the demising walls, as they're being called, and the bathroom. And, I mean, when you have a garage, who knows what's in that garage from time to time, right? So if we misuse it, that's an enforcement procedure.
We're good at that.
Huh?
We're good at that.
No.
Yeah, that's
But,
going
so
to
it's
be,
your argument that a garage is not necessarily just suited for
Exactly.
housing an automobile.
Exactly. It's not having, nothing in there that
There'll be
we're
living
propo-
space, right? There'll be no living space in there.
There's no, we wouldn't be allowed to have
No.
that in there. Doesn't meet any of the codes.
And the bathroom does not contain a shower or anything.
Nope.
and that would be Chris Talbot's call as to whether or not it's changing the use, which if he says it's not, then they'd be able to add that stuff into the building as it sits today without your approval.
Exactly.
All right, and if they're good with it, I'm good with it.
So, we
And
can
then what about
get
the
an
fact
opinion
that it's
from him.
Oversized?
The structure is pre-existing at that size, so they would be able to do any sort of interior work without increasing the nonconformity. The nonconformity is the setback and the footprint. So as long as they didn't increase the footprint of it, the interior work can be done.
Well, we're taking the existing garage and just swinging it around, and I think that's what gave Chris a little bit of a pause about whether we should be here or not, because we're reorienting it, and he wasn't sure whether that caused us a problem, rather than building it in place. If we wanted to, we could. We could. So, I'm certainly willing to have you, if you want, I will take it upon myself to ask Chris to send you guys a letter, or
Or we can as
David,
well.
if you wanna
If you'd
do it?
like, we can, if the board would like me to, we can ask Mr. Talbot for a decision on that, a determination on that.
We'd like his input, I think.
I mean, it would be nice to have that attached to the decision.
Anything further from the board? Anything from the floor? So is there, what would you like, sir?
I think we can close the hearing subject to the letter from Chris?
And we could close this for decision.
Yes.
And we could have that letter maybe by the work session.
Yep. Between David and myself, I'm sure we can get Chris to write the letter. And if he disagrees with me or changes, he would do it when we put the building permit in for it anyway, so we need to know, and I'm pretty confident that what we're doing is okay.
I move we close this application for decision pending a letter or notification from the building inspector.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
And aye. Did you say?
Aye, just,
Okay.
sure, to close it, absolutely.
Okay. Which brings us to 3050 Community Baptist Church, Plant Road.
Good evening. John Bennett and Reed for the applicant. I'm responding to some requests from the board and council for additional information. You'll remember the idea is to take these two lots and put them back to where they were before the church acquired them. The church acquired them by reason of the religious corporation law. They had to require them in the same name. There was a court order. I'm not aware that they were aware that worked a merger, but now but we're here if it's necessary. I did in a letter handed to the board on October 23rd give the board some case law to the effect that even though these lots are in the same name because they haven't been used in conjunction with one another, that they are nevertheless to be treated as separate lots. That's a determination that sometimes either the board makes on its own as a determination, or it could be seen as further buttressing the request for the variance to unmerge these two parcels. But when unmerged, what we would do is create a two-family house on the property for the purposes of affordable housing, as well as an apartment. We did submit with the October 23rd letter, a letter from the Southampton Housing Authority confirming that the proposed two-family home and the accessory apartment would be used for affordable housing. We also, in that letter, gave the board, and hopefully the board, all members all have copies, but if not, I can hand up some extras. Did you have the letter from the 23rd of October in which we annexed the parking scheme? The Wayne wanted to see parking delineated. If you don't have copies of that, I can, yes, I can give it to you. And we actually blew up the parking scheme. So parking for the church, additional parking for the church would be provided by an easement, which would allow for, as delineated on the parking plan, 20 spaces and a handicap space. Interestingly, the parking for the church now, you might say, well, where is the parking for the church now? The parking for the church now is provided by a 12,000 to 13,000 square foot parking easement on the property to the north. I'll have copies of that. I thought that we had handed up copies of that, but if we haven't, I have additional copies of the parking easement.
The Hildreth property?
Excuse me?
It's the Hildreth property.
Yes, I believe it is. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find Hank's signature on here. Yes, it's the thank you, it's the Hildreth property. David, this is just the parking
Thank you.
easement. So the parking, the existing parking is provided for the church via an easement on the parking to the north, on the property to the north, and I've handed up copies of that easement, that parking easement.
Yeah.
What we're suggesting is, what we're proposing, I should say, is spaces for an additional 20 cars on the, what will be the affordable housing property, along with one handicap space. And that's shown in detail as an attachment to the October 23rd, 2019 letter. Mark, do you need something? I'm sorry, what are you missing?
I'm good, I'm just... We're missing one copy, I think. Maybe I need it.
What are you missing a copy of? I'm sorry.
Suffolk County Clerk recording.
Oh, sure. Here. Sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
the easement is shown as an exhibit. The easement on the Hildreth property is shown as an exhibit at the I think it's at the very end of the parking easement. So the existing church is serviced by parking via an easement on the property to the north, and we're adding via an additional easement on the property that we're asking you to unmerge, the property to the south. We're adding 20 spaces and the handicap spaces. There's sufficient parking, more than specific, there's separate, more than sufficient parking for the two-family house and the apartment. We calculated under the code that it's a two-family dwelling. What you need there is 2 spaces for each dwelling in a two-family unit. It's 2 spaces per unit, that's 4, as long as you're not over 3 bedrooms, and you have the floor plans, and we're at 3 bedrooms each, so it's 2 spaces per family unit, that's 4, and 1 space for the apartment, and that's more than. And by the way, we're in a commercial zone, and the setback for parking is 10 feet. You can put it all in these required yards. You just have to stay 10 feet back. So there's more than ample room for the 5 spaces, 1 in the garage and 2 each in these access points, 2 separate access points, 1 off of Powell Avenue and 1 off of Plant Street. I want to make sure that that's takes care of everything that the board had asked for. Not that you can't ask for more information, but yeah, that was, Wayne wanted to see the way the parking was laid out. We've given you that in our April letter. We demonstrated that the church is served by existing parking on the easement to the north on the Hildreth property, demonstrated some additional authority for why we think that the board should unmerge these parcels, demonstrated that the property will be used for affordable housing by letter of the Southampton Housing Authority. It's in a light industrial zone, so I would respectfully submit
Issue
that.
that came up at the work session?
I'm sorry.
The issue came up at the work session?
Okay.
And there are, according to this, there's 2 entrances and exits from the parking place. You know,
Yes,
from-
yes.
And one of the problems at Plant Street is just, there are a lot of businesses, and they load up the street with parking. So it's like, this parking was being created for the sole purpose of the use of the church.
And
And it's like, as we've created a parking, they're going to come. You know, how are you going to keep all the people that, businesses from Plant Street from just filling up this parking lot?
Well, it's interesting.
Maybe we should just have the one entrance on
Oh.
Powell Avenue
For the residences.
for, it should not have an entrance and exit to the parking field from Plant Street.
Oh, we can do that. I guess we can do that. That's fine if that's the board's preference. So in other words, we would take the one entrance off Powell, connect that to the garage, I guess, in effect, right? And then find some other space for the other 2 spaces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
okay, that's fine, that's fine.
but you understand,
Which driveway you were thinking of
You just need the one
eliminating?
to the parking area. You don't need the one to the
Dan,
garage.
which one did you want to remove? I'm
well,
sorry.
the garage one, I don't care, but there's an entrance right alongside the garage that's going into the main parking area. According to this map, I'm looking at this one. Is this what we're looking at?
Well, the only reason I gave you this was to show the delineation of the parking spaces.
Yeah, but it shows an entrance on Powell, and it shows an entrance on
Oh, I see,
Plant.
yes. So would you, what, the preference would be to remove this?
No, remove that one, to the big parking lot
I guess the
On
thought
Powell.
was to
on
try to.
Powell.
Right.
Yeah, but the thought was, just from a site plan point of view, you don't want to mix this institutional use with the residential use. They'd probably want to screen this off.
I don't know if you're understanding me.
No, I must not be, I'm sorry.
You have 2 driveways on Plant Street, one that goes into the garage apartment.
Yes, right here, this one.
Right, that's fine.
This
So that's parking for that.
Okay.
Then immediately to the north of that, you have another entrance that goes into the church parking lot.
Oh, really? I don't see that here.
No, it stays on, oh, I see.
That looks like a curb cut to me.
Looks like a
Yeah, it
curb
is,
cut.
but the idea is to provide parking on, not only on this parcel, but some additional parking on the church
Yeah,
lot.
but you can still get to all those spots from Powell Avenue onto that parking.
It looks like you got 4 curb cuts.
What is this?
Two
One,
on Powell and 2 on Plant.
3.
2, 3. I see 1, 2.
Well, yeah, I don't, where is the 4th one? 1? I'm not saying, I'm just,
One,
that's
two,
not a
three,
rhetorical negative, that's just to help me out. You have 1 here off of Powell, and you have 1 off
You
of
have 2
Powell.
on Powell.
One goes behind that 2-family house and one goes into the parking lot. And you got 2 on Plant.
Somebody
One
help
to
me,
the
I'm
garage
pretty
and one
good
into
at
the
reading. Oh, I
parking lot.
see, this one here, is that what you're talking about? This one here,
Talking about the one
And
in
then there's one
dark.
right next to it for the house.
for the house.
No, I'm talking, see Plant Street where your pen is pointing right now?
Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, there's one on Plant Street.
There's
which
2
is-
on Plant
2
Street.
on Plant Street.
No, just 1 for the house,
Right.
and then 1 for the
Parking.
church.
And if you're
Parking
saying
for the
that
church.
one, eliminate that one.
I think the idea is to create a separate, you want to divorce the residential use from the institutional use, so that's good.
But still,
Planning.
I don't see why it still doesn't.
You don't see what?
Why it's still not divorced from the residential use. All you're doing is preventing work traffic from using that parking lot.
By eliminating this one?
Plant Street gets filled up with all the...
Okay, no, I'm not arguing
you know,
that.
So if there's no places to park on Plant Street, where are they going to park? They're going
Yeah,
to
I'm
pull in
just-
that parking lot.
I understand. What I'm trying to figure out is which driveway you want me to eliminate? Do you want me to combine these?
No, I
The
just,
northerly one.
Eliminate this one?
Yes.
That's how you get into these spaces.
reconfigure the spaces and come off of Powell Avenue. That's not how you get in those spaces.
How do you reconfigure? The church building prevents you from getting into these spaces from Powell. I'm missing something. I'm not trying to be dense. I'm not trying to be
It
argumentative
looks to
at
me
all.
that if you came in off of Plant Street,
Okay.
you'd have to take a hard left more than 90 degrees to go in on an angle back into those parking spaces anyway.
The parking spaces that are on the northerly
That
parcel.
go up against the church
The
property.
church.
It's a bad design.
All right, so what I'm just going to do, we're going to try to reconfigure it so that we only have one entrance off of Plant. However we get there, that would
You have one entrance off of Powell
I had two.
for the church parking lot, and one entrance off of Powell for the two-family house.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, how do I get into these? I'm trying to create spaces here, so how do I get into them?
Coming off of Powell Avenue.
Wait a
That's how
minute.
you get into
Yeah,
it
but
from
how-
this plan.
What do I do? I come in for Powell,
Yeah.
back here, and there's the building is blocking me from getting to these spaces that I'm trying to
What
create.
building is blocking?
You're
The
just looking
church.
at the wrong plan, is all.
No, it's the same thing here. If I come
church
into
is to
Powell,
the
wait a
north.
minute. If I come into Powell from here to get to these new
Right.
spaces, how do I get there?
You
The
swing
building
around
is
to the
right
left
there.
and you pull in. The dock area goes all the way around, it's L-shaped.
Let me take a look at it. So you want there's one
One
way to get
curb
in.
cut going into the garage on Plant Street.
Currently, on the church parcel, there's one way in, okay? So you want me to consolidate this and this so that there's only one?
Yeah, you might have to soften that corner, is
Okay,
what you're worried
that's
about.
fine. All right, take a look at it.
In other words, the only curb cut we want off of Plant Street is the one that goes directly into the garage.
I'm trying to figure out how the hell I get there.
Just eliminate the one curb cut.
Problem with Plant Street is it's loaded with cars, and by
yeah,
putting two
I'm not
curb
arguing
cuts,
that
now
point.
you're getting rid of even more spaces on Plant Street.
I'm not arguing that
You
point.
know,
I'm
so-
not arguing that point. I'm trying to figure out how somebody comes in here. So, all right, well, we'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it. I mean, usually, you don't think people would be obedient of signage. I have, in my office, I have a sign that says parking for my office only, and people.
Yeah, but have you driven down Plant Street?
Okay.
I go by your office all the time. I don't see like 9 businesses trying to use your parking lot.
No, that people come in and try to park there for the bank or park there and go across the street. I just go outside and yell at them.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll let you have it if you give us a designated yeller. you
Okay,
know,
very
so-
good. Let me try to rework it to everyone's benefit, so we'll see what we can do. So your preference would be just to come in off a Plant, and rather Powell?
Powell.
Okay, very good. All right, see what we can do.
Also, I just would like to address that I want to look at the number of uses and permitted uses on the property.
There's no permitted uses on this property. It's
These
in light industrial zone.
right, the extra residential uses are prohibited.
That's exactly, well,
So
that's what we're here for.
we'd be looking for, to make sure that the relief all covers that you're requesting.
We've made that part of the relief.
Okay.
Since the get-go, David, yeah. Yeah, it's an effective use variance, because it's not allowed in the light industrial zone. And if it wasn't for affordable housing, I wouldn't have the,
Gumption?
I was going to use something a little less.
Yeah, I thought so.
Right, no, I was just looking, I know I'm.
We heard you
I know
holding
I'm
back.
New to the
Thanks for the
application, but the application mentioned just section C and D, when I think we also need to notice it at least for section B of that, for the number of uses permitted on the property.
If that's what you
I
want
want
us
to make
to
sure
do.
that everything is
You'll speak to the
noticed
building.
properly.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Well,
John, just one more question or
Yes.
comment. The garage, besides the garage, is going to have an apartment on it, right?
That's was the hope, yes.
So you're going to have 3 families on this small
1,
piece
2,
of
3.
property.
Yep,
I think that's kind of dense.
that's within your discretion. I'm here to ask for the 3 families. That's what the
I can see
housing authority wants.
the two-family house, but the garage apartment,
Affordable housing is always going to run up against density issues.
It's the big,
But this is
it's the
really
big,
dense.
it's you've nailed it's the constant tension.
Dilemma.
Exactly, that's the constant tension. I can't, can't criticize that comment.
Will
but
Board of Health fly on this?
The Board of Health, this just works with to transfer some credits into it, some Pine Barren credits into it, which they're a little less taxing about when you're transferring into an LI zone, has been my experience, or a commercial
So you
zone.
don't have Board of Health, so, but
Well, we
you're
didn't
pretty
make-
assured you're going to get that?
It didn't make sense to go there until we knew how this board was going to look at it. Obviously, we'd have to go to the board of review, because from a density point of view, we're over density, there's no question about it, yeah.
Have we
But,
discussed the septic system? Is it going to be just one to serve all 3 units, or
that'll be whatever the Board of Health tells us to do.
you could have up to 3?
No, we would have the most we'd have 2, one for the apartment
One for the apartment and one for the two-family house?
yeah.
Do you have a feeling that they'll be able to fit it with the other improvements that you're proposing?
No, that's not a problem at all. You've got, you can put them, if you give them a covenant, you can put them under driveways, you can put them under parking lots, you know that. Yeah, the question is, and again, I understand your point about the density. That's the tension. I certainly can't criticize the comment, but ultimately it's within your
It
discretion.
is an industrial zone, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the only thing I was thinking.
It's also very crowded there.
Yeah, you know.
There's cars all over the place in the VAV.
Well, unfortunately, there wasn't any available affordable housing on Jenner Meadow. We had asked, but I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. That's a naughty comment, though. I'm sorry.
You get worse all the time, don't you?
It's terrible. It's just, I hope it's not I hope it's not creeping senility. That would be. We'll figure this to everyone's benefit, and
Anything else from the board? Anything
we'll look
from,
at the notice to make sure it's
Okay,
perfect.
yeah, let's,
anything from the floor? Is there a motion? If you would like a motion to adjourn?
If you would, thank you.
Move we adjourn this application for all purposes.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
And done.
Thanks for your help.
Case 3052, 3053, 259 South Main.
Good evening, gentlemen and lady.
just for the record, I'm recused on this matter.
Okay.
Stephen Rhoda and Rebecca Brown from Harris Design. Here, we have submitted plans that hopefully respond to the questions, comments from previous hearings. We don't have anything new to offer tonight, other than we did receive approval from the trustees for the dock on Monday at the hearing. So we wanted tonight to submit copies of the approval resolution. That's,
Could you place that in that file number, please?
No, plenty of copies.
I can pass it along.
There's some extra copies.
This one goes in the preview. Any comments, sir? Mr. Voorhees?
Well, just a little summary of where we are. This was the matter that was a prior violation. We did meet in the field. We've had a number of board meetings discussing it, and we did have these plans before the last work session. So my recollection is that we had some extensive discussion at last month's meeting. The plans expand the buffer that had previously been established through a prior permit. I think it was November of 2015. And it provides a much greater setback and natural vegetated buffer from Lake Agawam, which accomplishes a lot of goals in terms of the Lake Agawam comprehensive management plan and just water quality protection of the lake. That's kind of balanced with some additional fill that's outside the prior buffer and essentially regrades the property, I'll say subtly, in order to establish some reasonable use areas on the property. This was also the case where we had a prior retaining wall that was not authorized. We're removing most of that wall, leaving a small segment and a return in order to make the grade transition. So I had looked at these plans prior to work session. I didn't have any further comments. I think they're responsive to what we had asked for. And I have no further questions or comments at this time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody from the board, attorneys, the floor, wants to respond? No. So are we good to close for decision?
For both
For
applications.
both applications.
Both
This includes the
applications.
dock, and they're all on one plan now.
So would that be two decisions or one?
I think it can be incorporated into one
One
decision.
decision?
So we'll entertain a motion to close for decision number 3052 and 3053.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in
And Mr.
favor?
Chairman, because we had this prior to work session, and we had worked out a lot of the items, and also in consideration of the fact that the site is under construction, when I went there, it was under active construction, I did proceed to prepare a draft permit for your consideration,
Okay,
if you would want to entertain that, rather than waiting a month.
okay, I think we could consider that. This is a wetland, simply a wetland thing.
Yeah, it's just a wetlands permit, and it's really just fine tuning and kind of amending a prior plan. So I'll just pass this out.
Does that include the dock, right?
Yes.
You can get that diving board on the dock, didn't you?
I know you wanted that. As the lake gets cleaner, you might want that.
Probably.
So this is special permit conditions. It does reference this plan, which was last dated October 10th. And what we've done here is kind of dovetail this with the prior permit, because the prior permit did have some minor modifications to the house, the deck, and the upland areas. So you'll note that that's referenced in the project description with the prior permit from 2015. That was case 2887. And then it does note at the bottom of the first page, and I'll just go through a little more detail because we're doing this on the fly, that the revegetation area has been completed. And I did inspect that, and that's the hatched area on the plan, and it's very well established. So this permit modifies the landscape plan to expand the buffer and modify the activities within the 125-foot area. So the basic project description is in those 5 bullets on page 2, which does include the dock, which, as I said, is shown on the plan. I think it's DP1, which is the third sheet of the set.
The last sheet.
Right, third and last sheet of the set. And so on the middle of page 2, there's a number of reasons why we don't expect this will have a significant adverse impact. It is a type 2 action under seeker, but we like to reflect in our decisions the logic for it. And it's pretty much what I said before. We're expanding a buffer substantially, and there was already a good buffer in the 2015 permit. So the next part are the special conditions. I did cross-reference the original permit, again, just so that it's very clear that that's in place for the activities other than what's shown on this plan. We can't really revoke or change that permit. I just want to supplement it. And then on the last page, page 3, we're referencing the 3 plans that are part of this set, which are on the table. And then the rest are standard conditions, which include erosion control, hours of operation, potential damage to roads, and removal of sediments, and so forth. So that's before you for consideration. Happy to help answer any questions.
That date on page 2, is that correct? November 17th, 2019? Hasn't happened yet.
That should be 2015.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Good catch. We entertain a motion to
to approve. It looks pretty thorough to me. doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wetland permit. Motion?
Yeah, I move we approve the decision by our environmental consultant on cases 3052 and 3053, 259 South Main Street,
I'll second.
As amended?
as amended. Thank you.
Second that. Proviso, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
I'm actually going to abstain from voting. I said I was going to abstain from voting on
Oh,
this
you have
matter.
one
I haven't
abstention.
heard the whole
I
thing.
got it.
Got it?
Got it.
You're on the ball.
Yeah, man. Okay. Three zero five four, oh, we adjourned, I'm sorry. New cases.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good job. 3056, McAvoy Sherman, 6 Squabble Lane. For the applicant.
Evening, Andrew Goldstein, Acting Captain Brown and Goldstein, 34 Canada Road, East Hampton. This is an application to revegetate a 75-foot buffer. I have James Walker from InterScience who can explain the plan and available for answering any questions.
Okay, Jim Walker from InterScience on behalf of Patricia McAvoy Sherman. This is 6 Squabble Lane. Our office worked with Ackerman, Packman, Brown, and Goldstein to resolve a New York State DEC violation. DEC violation has a requirement, an order on consent already issued, and we're required to plant this by November 15th. I believe that's the date. It could be November 17th. I'm not 100% sure. In any case, we have a considerable amount of pressure from the state to do this planting. The planting's been approved. It was prepared by the property owner's designer, and it shows native plants with a little path through the 75-foot wide buffer that was required by the state. As part of the project, the state also approved common reed management here. This board and perhaps Chick should be aware that Wickapog Pond had a common reed management program undertaken by Bruce Horwath at some point. It was a 5-year program. The 5-year program is over. There was a lot of nice things that happened with the 5-year program, and basically if you go to Wickapog Pond and look on the shoreline today, you can't tell it was ever undertaken at all. It's a little discouraging. However, I was able to get the DEC approval for the same plan, and what we would like to do instead of give up on the shoreline is to undertake a 3-year program, same as the town of Southampton regularly permits. It's selective cutting several times a year to recover the common reed invasion on the shoreline and get the native plants established again. It would be part and parcel to the same project that was required by the DEC, which is the establishment of these native plants in this 75-foot wide area. I think the two together are a big improvement, and Wickapog Pond would be well served by having both projects done. I submitted the affidavit of posting and mailing. There's photographs and a design narrative submitted for this plan. I did send the materials to Chick via email because we are under the gun by New York State DEC to get this resolved. And in part of the preparation, in discussing it with the attorney and the property owner's representative, I prepared a design narrative for the common reed, which I would submit to this board and to Chick. But it is the standard protocol that Marty Shea imposes on the town of Southampton projects. It's selective cutting. You rake out the thatch. It's reliable. It works well. At the end of the 3 years, we would recommend that the property owner renew it and do it again for another 3 years. And then thereafter, it's a pretty good end result, and you have a shoreline that's pretty much free of common reed and would require very little maintenance after that. I think that's it. We have a real deadline with New York State DEC. I know the board has time constraints of their own and whatnot, so if there is a timing problem, I will return to New York State DEC and ask for delay on the order of consent. Ideally, the Common Reed Management Program would start January and February, and the planting plan can be done more or less at any time, but it should be done after the first part of the Common Reed Management Program is done. That's the part where you go in and cut it and rake it out and take all the material off-site. So naturally, after that, planting would be done. We're allowed to put a goose fence here and here, and we have to take them out. There is a date on the order on consent from the New York State DEC to take out the goose fence. I think that's all I have.
Do we have a copy of the consent order?
Yes, you do. It is in the file.
It's now in the file? Okay.
So what do you think, Mr. Voorhees?
I think it's a question of timing. This is the first hearing that we've had. I will say honestly that I have not prepared a written decision at this time. I don't have any comments on the plan. I did review the consent order. I reviewed the plan for native plantings. It has been approved, it appears to me, by DEC. I see a stamp on it. It seems to be part of the consent order. I might have questioned some of the plantings in terms of where they are with respect to sunlight, but ultimately, you know, as long as there's a survival provision, that should not be an issue, and they may do okay. So I see that in the consent order, it refers to plantings to be completed by 11/15/19, and then the goose fence to be removed by 12/15/20. Jim, I thought you just said that that's what it says, 12/15/20.
Yeah, we remove we would remove the turkey wire fence the following year.
Right, right.
We do the
So you
planting
just
by-
said before that you're going to do the Phragmites management, but not plant until after the cutting?
The Phragmites project could start as soon as we got approval. Ideally, it's done in the off-season. The plant material right now is done growing. It can be cut now. And it should be done before this stuff is begun.
Right.
They're going to have to cut.
So it looks to me as though on this, you'd have to go back to DEC anyway.
For,
it says plantings to be completed by 11/15/19.
if we don't meet the order on consent, I have to return to DEC.
Right.
And I would tell them the village dragged their feet and were really slow.
I think the point I'm making is that they're already not going to make the dates.
We just met you.
In any event,
Trying to make you laugh.
Chick, can you give me
our next meeting is
I do it
11/20.
at my wife. Sometimes she laughs.
a little history here? This is, what was it, 5 years ago? They came in the plan and they kind of
Yes.
cut this all out. They had a staging area where they piled all the Phragmites, and then
There was even water lily removal. as
yeah, right, and for what you're saying, it all grew back.
Dan, I have some comments on that. We've been working on projects all around Wickapog. I go fishing there. When Bruce Horwath got the job, it was in lieu of our office getting the job, which was fine. Mrs. Penn made me come down and visit her on a Saturday, but they hired Bruce Horwath, who is a competitor, but a pretty good-natured guy that we get along with really well. When they did the work, the results were kind of spectacular. The plants came back along the shoreline all over the place, and they were doing real well. The problem was someone wasn't funding the project properly. There wasn't enough money spent, it wasn't done often enough, and it was cut kind of high. We tend to try to cut Phragmites, especially in pure stands, which it is along the water. We cut it at grade. all the way down to the bottom, and especially where the water is. If you cut it down low and the water comes over it and there's ice over it, it will kill the ice in the water over top of it during the winter will kill the Phragmites and it won't come back. I can show you pictures if you're interested. But in any case, the only real critique of that project, other than the water lilies, that was kind of a fiasco, but the Common Reed project, the only criticism that I would have of it, it wasn't done often enough and low enough and aggressive enough. To get rid of Phragmites is hard. Japanese knotweed is hard. Bamboo is hard. You have to really be seriously committed to do it, or it's not worth it.
All right, so that was my question, is this was done 5 years ago. They followed up, but maybe funding wasn't quite what was there, and now you're going in and do it again.
Part of the difference that I see here is this is one homeowner, and presumably they don't want to waste their time and money, that they would follow up. That was a joint permit project that was authorized previously. And as
But
Jim
the
said,
question is, one homeowner, aren't they just hemmed in by the
well, I was
problem?
going to ask if there will be a root barrier.
We could put a root barrier, but Dan, in all practical terms, even if it's only one guy on the pond, and they end up with soft rush and nice wetlands vegetation growing, chairmaker's rush, these things will come back naturally. They'll grow quickly. We've seen it before on this particular pond. That's a good thing. Maybe somebody else will get. There's a nice wetlands buffer right down here. I think it's 2 properties down that our office did. It has switchgrass all the way through the wetlands buffer. When somebody successfully resolves a problem, sometimes the neighbors will follow suit. This is a wet lawn. It's a mess. The plantings that we see from Hannah Hunt are unusual, but I think they're native. It's going to be interesting to see how well they do. I think Chick can put in conditions to guarantee that they will be required to have 85% success over 3 years, which is typical. DEC has that same proviso. But planting this and doing this is a good example for the rest of the pond. The other property owners see it, they may be jealous and want to do it themselves. It's a good example. I think the people on the pond watch each other quite closely. And the more we see of these Common Reed projects, the better I like them. When we first started doing them in the 90s, it was very hard to have the experience, come up with the success, know the contractors can do the work. These days, it's much more predictable, and we have done a number of them with the village, with Chick, with your board, and the results are spectacular. They're not nice or kind of cool. They're spectacular. The last one we did for Avril Mortimer on Halsey Neck Pond is spectacular. If you drive down there and you peer through his gate and take a look, you won't see Phragmites or Japanese knotweed. We did another one across the pond. The lady saw the Mortimer doing the job, and she did hers. And she has a little dock next to it, but we had a real problem with Japanese knotweed. But we learned how to dig it, and we came back to the board and asked for additional approvals. And the bottom line is, it's spectacular. You get native plants that come back, the birds like it, the turtles like it. These are good projects. I think it's part and parcel with the DEC making the people install their buffers. I think it's a good thing.
You may remember Meadowmere Lane, which is south side of Meadowmere is the one Jim's referring to, that has been very successful. And the Mortimer property that Jim referenced, the wetlands have actually expanded beyond the original wetlands that were flagged, the field conditions. So they do work. Jim, I just wanted to ask, based on what you said and my observation about some of the plants and shading and sun, would you change anything on this plan?
The plan's a nice science experiment. I think there's some good, credible hope that some of those things would work, but I personally have never planted Virginia creeper Wild geranium is very prevalent for deer foraging. Little blue stem is a piece of cake, broom sedge is a piece of cake, sweet pepper bush is a piece of cake. We don't spec out spirea anywhere. Inkberry and arrowwood are fine. So would I make a couple adjustments? Yes. If you have suggestions, I'll bring them back to Hannah Hunt, and we'll try to resolve this by the time the board gets around to drawing up a permit condition. I'm sure that Chick has similar thoughts as I did when I saw what they came back with. The DEC did approve all the plans.
So I think based on Jim's offer, I would like to see some adjustments to the plan if, and again, I don't think we want to interfere with a consent order, but if you have to go back to DEC and ultimately we get a better plan, to me it makes sense. If there's anything that I can do in interfacing with DEC, I'd be happy to do that. And I would like to see root barrier added.
Root barrier is fine. If you have any specific suggestions, that would be helpful with the designer. And I would like to keep some of her plants there because I would like to see how they do.
Agreed.
Virginia creeper growing on the ground as ground cover is very unusual, and I'd like to see how it works. Wild geranium is spectacular. The first time I had grown it myself, my mom gave it to me from upstate, and it's just a beautiful plant. The only problem with Long Island is it draws deer, and I'm not talking about a few. They come and eat all of it. So we need to kind of downplay a couple plants. We'll substitute them as Chick and I come up with ideas. That's all I have.
And as you attract deer with the wild geraniums, they might settle for other things while they're there.
The other stuff could make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet pepper bush is going to get pounded. But when we, for instance, if you have Virginia rose, they will come and browse the tops off, but your Virginia rose will end up being 2 foot high. So the people who like views of the water are happy, and the deer are happy, and the plant does fine. There's a way around most issues. Native plantings is something you learn by bumping into problems. If you've done it long enough, you figure out a way to deal with most issues. We can correspond back and forth, and I'm sure Mr. Voorhees and I will come to agreement.
All righty. Anybody else like to comment on this application? So, anybody else on the board?
No.
Floor? Anywhere? Shall we adjourn?
I think that would be appropriate. I can work with Jim and hopefully get some plans for the next meeting, and he can speak to his client, make some adjustments, and coordinate with DEC. I'd be happy to help with that.
When the board and Chick start to get an idea when I can get approval for the project, I need to tell the DEC. So as soon as possible, advise us what we can expect.
I don't see any big issues here.
I mean, if you get the planning settled between now and the work session,
Very possible.
we could do a decision, you think, next?
Yeah, we meet twice that week before Thanksgiving on the 19th.
Yeah, it's a
and the
short,
21st.
yeah.
It's a short week, but if I get something well in advance, I don't see why we can't
I'm pretty sure I know
accomplish
what
that.
Chick Voorhees wants.
Yeah, well, then you'd only be, what, a week late or 5 days late?
When it comes to resolving New York State DEC order on consent, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to do it via email and a phone conversation and get some clarification from the DEC how much leeway they would give the property owner. So we'll handle that.
All right. Anyone else make a comment? Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Fine. 3057 Watkins, 44 Halsey Neck Lane.
I don't know the protocol here, so you're going to have to help me a little bit.
First, state your name. That'd be a good start.
My name is Henry Watkins. My wife and I
own 44 Halsey Neck Lane. We also own a property at 46 North Main. Here in- Yes, yes, that's what I was curious what I needed to do with this. These.
Green tickets.
Thank you very much. Basically, we're requesting an 8-foot extension of a back terrace that will be attached to the house. The terrace would then extend, I'm sorry, it's an 18-foot terrace that will extend 8 feet beyond into the setback. Basically, that's it. We're doing renovation work right now. We just started earlier this month. We expect it to be completed by the summer. And the terrace would be a part of that because, as we all know, people live outside and they want to enjoy the outside. So that's why we're building it. There is an existing pergola on the property. The pergola is approximately 30 feet from the rear property line. This would be 52 feet from the property line. The pergola is open-ended, or open, around, has a cover over it. The new proposed terrace will be open-ended, no walls or anything like that. It's intended to have a cover over it as well for shade because, of course, we all know sunlight's not really good for your skin. So that's it.
Is the pergola staying? Are you removing the
Well, I
pergola?
mean, it's existing, so we're probably going to leave it.
Oh, okay.
The only,
I don't know. I mean, money.
we only have the survey, we don't really have plans, but it shows the proposed covered porch with a set of steps that come down that appear to be 2 feet away from the edge of the pool. There's no measurement in there, but we felt that might be a safety issue.
I'm sure that we would be willing to entertain a recommendation. Obviously, there's going to be grass between the terrace and the pool, so it's got to be...
Well, this is what we have. And it doesn't show what's grass or what's not, but it just shows these steps and the edge of the
Yes.
pool. So
Looks like 2 feet or so.
Yeah, it's not large, but it's going to have to be cut, so, I mean, it can't be too small.
Can you open those plans down so we can see it?
Open up plans, sir, on the table for the TV cameras.
I had it blown up because my eyes aren't as good as they used to be.
Okay.
But it's not to scale, so
So we're worried about a safety issue with the steps
okay.
to the pool. In the past, we had a project like that, and the applicant agreed to remove the steps there and put them around a corner.
Okay.
In other words, if the steps were on the southern side, that would probably satisfy our reservations.
Or you could recess the steps into the
I was
covered
going to
porch
say, is there a
area.
distance
True.
that would be okay?
Is there a distance? It's not really in the code, is it?
No, but you'd want it at least 5 feet.
Yes, you would.
I think we would probably be willing to, 5 feet from the coping?
But I would think, yeah.
I think that we could probably live with that.
In other words, you could recess the steps into the porch,
Well, we could recess it, or
or you go out the south side.
if need, or that, or the north side, or if need be, if, from an aesthetic point of view, we felt that we could, I guess, go back 2 or 3 feet and not have a full 18 feet, but maybe a 16 or 15 feet. I guess we
Pool,
could.
you mean? The pool?
No, I mean the
deck.
the terrace.
The deck.
Because the pool's already there.
Right, I'm sorry, the deck.
Right, so,
You can't move the pool.
well, we can, but,
That's really expensive.
yeah, that's,
So that's our concern. Do we have any other concerns?
Could you just give us a little background on what happened? Because the project's underway,
Right.
and I mean, I imagine that initial steps were that you had architectural plans that you looked at and
Yes.
approved, and then,
Went through the architectural review board and the whole nine yards.
so then at what point did it occur that, wait, let's add a porch in the back?
Oh, no, we've always had a terrace in the back.
So this was always part of the plan?
Yes, it was always part
It wasn't covered before, though, right?
No, but what happened was, when we went to, I can't remember the sequence, but at some point, somebody said, wait a minute, you need a 60-foot setback from the rear property line, and you've only got 52 feet. And so that kind of created the need for a variance. I think that we kind of looked at it and said, we're building something that's already, a similar structure is already on the property, even though it's an accessory structure, not attached to the house. The pergola is there, it's 30 feet from the property line. We're going to be, if we got a variance, we'd be 52 feet. And that seemed to us, I guess, logically, that one would suggest that the other one was okay.
No, I understand that. What I'm wondering is, at some point, you applied for a building permit, you must have a building
I
permit.
think that's exactly where we got into,
Realizing you needed a variance.
yeah,
But they issued the building permit, though, didn't they?
they issued the building permit.
But that's what I'm concerned about, or I'm questioning, why did they issue a building permit
They didn't pick up on it.
if,
I don't have the permit. They may not have issued it. Did they issue it to include this covered porch?
that's what I'm wondering, when the covered porch was requested? I guess maybe the answer is to get the file on the building permit application and see.
I'm sure our contractor, Buddy Wines, would not have begun construction if he didn't feel comfortable that he had the proper paperwork.
Yeah.
And this survey does not really give the measurement from the edge of the pool to the edge of the covered porch, which would be nice to have with that, because I think I'm okay with that, as long as those steps didn't protrude any further than the 52 feet.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. That's like, what, 2 feet?
The stairs, yeah.
Usually
How many steps?
2. So usually a step is, what, 12 inches?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
But are you counting the step down into the grass?
you always got to step down.
It depends on the rise, so if
Right.
it, the
But if
lower
somebody-
the rise, the wider the step.
Somebody
so.
tripped on the last step, they fall into the pool and die.
But to your point, what I think you were suggesting is to recess the steps into the porch.
Yeah, just as long as it doesn't get any closer than
You
the
either
roof
can
line.
recess it or you can move
Put it at the other end.
terrace back. a
Yeah,
couple
or you
feet.
could pull the, yeah,
And the fencing is adequate otherwise, I guess?
that's going to be the code anyway.
Yeah, it's got to meet code. And I believe that the terrace is going to be less than 30 inches off the ground, so.
If he pulls back the width of the porch, does he have to re-advertise?
No, because the variance would be less than what it was advertised for.
But it'd have to correct the surveys, so that would be part of the
Correct.
file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, either if he pulled the porch back or relocated the steps, it sounds like anything that he's going to need to do, we're going to need to have a new survey.
Or recess them, right?
It's
So
not,
you have a choice of
I'm sure that,
3 choices, I
I'm
guess.
sure Squires and Holden would be glad to bill me.
You didn't think it was going to be painless, did you?
No, not at all.
Anything else from the board? Attorneys or the floor? So we're asking, you understand what we're asking for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye.
So, just so I understand the process, the next step,
The next step is to reassess your stairs,
right?
and where the choices were to move the whole porch back, go around the corner to the perhaps south or north, or recess the stairs.
And they show that
and
on
to
the new
draw
survey.
that.
Okay, and then do we have to come back, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as it's open, you have to come back.
Probably enjoying this by now anyway.
No, I mean,
If you could get Suarez Nolan to get that done before the next
sorry.
work session, we could probably move into a decision on that.
For next month.
Yeah.
If you could get it in, the new plans by, what did we say? November by the 19th.
2 days
We have
from
a
the
work
first
session
decision.
the
Thank you.
19th.
It's an easy
sure
one.
that,
Come on, you got a crunch time. You're new.
We'd be able to do that.
Fresh.
I have a feeling that our architect would be able to redraw the plans within a short period of time.
Okay, so that's.
So I just want to make clear, the choice is relocate the stairs on either side of the terrace, recess the stairs, or move the terrace back so that the distance from the bottom step to the coping is at least 5 feet.
Move the terrace back?
Or, you know,
Does it end up?
Instead of extending it 18 feet, you
16 feet or
go
whatever. So it's
16 or 15, whatever.
15 or 14 or whatever it is. Because
Whichever works out.
I want to make sure that
We're saving you money already.
No, I just want to make sure that I ask the architect to do what you need to do so that we don't have 3 or 4 meetings.
Right,
So, okay, I'm clear on that.
right. And if you bring it to the work session, well,
I'm probably not going to, but she might, the architect.
we would be alerted to any error that someone made, and they could fix it. But it sounds like a pretty easy fix.
Yeah, I mean, before the building permit was issued, we had to get the survey redone so that it only showed the porch or the terrace to be 8 feet. So it complied with the 60-foot setback. But our original plan was to have the terrace 18 feet. So that's why we're here. Otherwise, we wouldn't even waste your time.
Okay.
So I will ask them to make those changes.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Next case, Lake Agawam Conservancy. Lake Agawam. 3058.
My name's Charlie McGuckin with Rue Associates Environmental Consultants representing the Lake Agawam Conservancy, which is a newly formed not-for-profit entity. We're proposing to do some work within the lake itself only. The issue we have is the toxic algae within the lake has caused a lot of problems. In this particular instance, we're looking to do a number of different remedies. This particular permit is related to removing a dense stand of water lilies on the southwest portion of the lake along the shoreline, and then add aeration systems similar to the existing systems within the lake today along this portion of the lake, which is all bordered by private homeowners. Previously inaccessible for lake aeration because of a lack of electrical power in the area, in that immediate vicinity. So what we're proposing is specifically to remove, again, these strand of water lilies, which runs along about a 129,000 square foot area along the southeast portion. There are 5 homeowners specifically who are willing to provide electrical power to connect the aerator systems. And we've also met with the town, who suggested we use the edge of the parking lot on the south end of the lake to temporarily stage the removed vegetation, to let it dry out for a short period of time, a period of weeks, before we can remove and dispose. The permit, a separate permit it has been issued simultaneously with the town for their review. We also reached out to New York State DEC, and they provided in writing a no jurisdiction confirmation. So they, for the purposes of this work, they do not require any type of jurisdictional review. So we initially set out to try to get this done in the fall. This fall, we're sort of running out of time, but we're still looking to get the permit to remove. We may need to do this in the spring, just because it's the late stage of the period now. The problems that this section of the lake presents is that the nature of the prevailing winds are such that they blow from the southwest, and they sort of pass over this section. And the algae tends to accumulate thickest where it doesn't have the wind to dissipate and thin it out. So in this particular area, the algae accumulates, it doesn't really dissipate or blow away, and the water lilies trap the algae. So it's sort of a thick pea soup in this particular area. It prevents really any use of the shoreline by these particular homeowners. And the Lake Agawam Conservancy is proposing to pay for this work, along with other water quality improvements, but we're proposing to start with this particular scope. We submitted an application in early October, October 3rd, to the building department for Chick's review. We have addressed comments. Those exist in these copies here that have not yet been submitted to the building department, the revised documents. That's really what we're proposing. We've gotten a lot of comments regarding the aerators. They're bottom diffuser aerators. I think there's several dozen of them in the lake at this time. We're proposing either the same or very similar models, but just more of them in these areas that were previously inaccessible. The aerator equipment is designed to be placed along the shoreline. It has the ground fault interrupter, safety devices. There is no electrical power that goes into the lake, into the water, just air. So it requires just a standard GFI outlet in the yard, standard receptacle plugs in. The box is about 2 feet by 2 feet, a little less than 2 feet high. Has a hum of a small motor, kind of like a pool pump. Right now we've got the 5 homeowners committed to providing this power, and it's the aerators themselves, along with the removal of the water lilies, will now allow for prevention of accumulation of the thick algae. The bottom diffusers disrupt the cycle of the algae. They're specifically recommended for this type of improved oxygen, so bottom up. So in other words, you're producing the most oxygen at the bottom where the lake water needs it the most. This is the recommended type of aerator that the village has previously recommended.
Aerators operate 24/7, 365 days a year?
They do.
And
They-
then who maintains them? If the GFI trips and it's not working, how do you know? In other words, you're gonna put a number of these things in, you know, and
Correct.
they just plug into a GFI from what you say, you know? and
Yes.
GFIs are sensitive, they go off all the time, and so then the system's not working. So is there a regular maintenance procedure with these?
Well, I can go over that with Gary Gillespie specifically to see his experience with the, I believe there's about 4 different units with about, I don't know, somewhere between 24 and 36 of these. So from what I've seen, they're running steadily. I believe you're right, they probably do go off from time to time. In this case, it would be probably only easy for the homeowners to be able to reset the circuit to put them back on.
If they live
But
there
these homes
all
are
the time.
always occupied.
Right. I
But we
didn't
just
know if
look
there
at-
could be like a red light that goes on if the circuit goes off, so that you know that it needs resetting, or if there's some type of,
There'd have to be somebody there to see that.
We could
well,
look,
people are there, caretakers, you know, like you said, they're not there all the time, but usually there's landscapers and caretakers.
Yeah,
and you have to-
there's regular maintenance on the properties, on these particular properties.
we could look for floating carp.
In this instance, if they went off, they would just need to be turned back on. There wouldn't be any hazard or problem with this. They are designed to be left in place. They could be removed in the wintertime, the dead of winter, but there's no reason that you have to do that. So they are designed to run. And they have a 3-year warranty, so they won't last forever. They would have to be replaced over time.
Is it possible for us to know what decibels these things run at, for one thing?
Yeah, I did actually look for that. They are all enclosed in an aluminum box. As you near them, you hear it. I guess I just equate it to a pool pump noise. It does have a small motor. The units are pretty small, about this big. They do offer a sound attenuation insulation or muffler to improve the sound attenuation.
Right.
But I can, certainly verify the.
Are you all interested, board, seeing specifics on that noise and stuff?
I mean, the quieter the better.
Yeah.
I mean, the homeowners are agreeing to have these things in their yard anyway, so they're, the noise
the ones
factor
affected
is,
by it.
yeah.
And also, if it violates the village code noise requirements, they'd be cited and have to address it.
All right.
Yeah.
Now-
The existing units don't have any special sound attenuation. The existing units are along the town right-of-way along the side of the road.
So eliminating the lily pads would facilitate the wind to blow off the algae, is that what you said?
Well, the wind is not going to change because the homes are essentially blocking the prevailing wind. So the idea would be to remove the lily pads, install the aerators, and create circulation. So we wouldn't be able to rely on the wind solely.
Will that inhibit the regrowth of the lily pads?
The lily pads are going to grow back. We're not actually going to rip out the roots. We're just going to cut them off at the bottom. That's what's proposed. In part because if we were to get into the sediments, it would probably involve a greater level of review and cost. And I think at that point, the DEC would more likely want to get involved once the sediments are removed. So we're proposing to cut them off with a harvester that's designed for this exact purpose. We are pretty confident that they will grow back in a year's time. We're requesting a 5-year maintenance period with the permit to be able to do this as necessary once a year. We proposed in the permit, if 25% grows back, we would consider doing the additional removal. So we're looking at that type of time frame. But I would think within a year or two, we would need to do this again.
There are people who argue that wind-blown algae is not exactly a very healthy thing, so have you addressed that at all?
Well, we're not going to increase wind-blown
Oh, I
algae.
thought you said that earlier on.
No, we're just going to improve the circulation from the bottom up, so we're going to disrupt the cycle of the algae. So the algae likes to come up during the day and down at night, and the aerators disrupt their cycle so that it reduces their production. So in other words, it helps control the algae. These are going to be predominantly, aerating from the bottom up, so it's not like we're creating waves at the surface.
After 3 years, would you be able to give us a report on how effective it has been in controlling the algae in that section?
Absolutely.
Has the current aeration done any good for the lake?
It doesn't, it prevents the most significant accumulation of algae, that pea soup accumulation. So where the aerators are, and there's a number of them, if you stand in the park on the north end and you look out, they're hard actually to notice, but they're there. You just see a small expression at the surface. But in the radius of influence, it's still green, but it's not that heavy green. So it helps reduce the algae accumulation, but it's not addressing the source, the nitrogen source. It's only at the one of an initial measure, or continuing the initial measure that's already been started by the village in areas previously inaccessible.
So your company has additional projects that are going to be addressing this algae besides this removal of the lily pads going forward?
The Conservancy is evaluating a number of things, and they're raising funds and everything from further investigation to proposing different methods. So this is step one. And I think we're trying to have the process be such that we can, because we need to submit in parallel to the village and the town and then possibly the DEC to try to have a comprehensive review of anything within the lake so that everybody's on board and everybody's pulling in the same direction.
This work is mainly at the south end of the lake?
It's the southwest end of the lake, so it stretches for about, there's 5 properties who are involved in the electrical, but it's about 10 properties, which is, some of them are very big. So it's a total of about 4 acres, but it's only about 50 feet wide, so it's pretty long along the, it's not all the way to Pond Lane, but it goes pretty far up from the corner all the way, pretty far up, more than halfway up. So we're about halfway up the lake. And it's pretty nasty. You go out there, and you don't want to go near that water. It's nasty. And then at the die-off in the fall, it stinks really bad.
The last little corner there, at the southwest end of the lake, gets a lot of stuff. Really gets ugly looking.
Yeah. And so the other benefit will be just trying to reduce that sheer mass of die-off, which is, so, and the die-off is objectionable, but also it does help fuel the additional algae the following year. So it sort of is it'll be an ongoing type of maintenance. And really the idea of the aerators is really to, just because the water's stagnant, and then the added benefit, along with trying to disrupt the algae cycle, is that it's going to provide dissolved oxygen to prevent the pockets of low oxygen for the fish. So that's the other reason for the bottom aerators.
Charlie, what did you say was the status with the town? The town trustees?
It's under review. I have not been able to get in front of the town yet.
So you're not going to make it for autumn, I guess.
It doesn't appear so. I have sat in a work session at the town, but I haven't had the hearing.
It looks favorably upon the effort, so.
Okay.
Anybody else have a comment? Is there anyone from the floor like to comment?
So I can make a couple of remarks, Rob?
Please.
We have looked at this extensively. The Lake Agawam plan was done back in 2007. At that time, the lily pad areas were inventoried, and there was a recommendation to allow some native vegetation, being the lily pads, to remain in the lake. There was a removal project that was approved by this board some years ago in the southwest corner. That was done, and they did grow back, which is not unusual. One of the things that makes this project very beneficial is what Charlie said and referred to, that you're going to be cutting the stalks and the leaf material, removing that from the lake. But you have to keep in mind that the lily pads will uptake nitrogen from the lake. So that's one of the additional benefits. As Charlie said, it'll remove some of that biomass from accumulating at the bottom of the lake and adding to the lake organic sediments and decaying or deteriorating over time. We recognize the need for the project, and overall it is beneficial. I was hoping that it could be done this fall, and it's a shame to hear that that may not be able to happen.
I don't, it seems like it'll be difficult considering right, I don't have the town approval and, we're here today.
Yes.
And we also want to get it done as cost effectively as possible. It's a not-for-profit, and I would also like to talk to the appropriate entities about disposal of the plants and, the most beneficial for everybody. So that hasn't been, there's some things to work out.
Right.
The contractor who can do the harvesting, that's pretty straightforward, and I think that's, the project isn't overly complicated, but we may be able to try to reduce costs if we can work on the disposal part of it. So. Good.
And I did speak with Dr. Gobler. I spoke with Ed Warren at the town trustees, and just got a sense of some of their input and involvement in the project. And I know you have consulted with Dr. Gobler, yes. And he is generally feels that this would be beneficial. Of course, he's done quite a lot of work on the lake over the years. And I gave a presentation to the village trustees last month that included this, as well as a number of other projects. Someone had asked, what else is going on? There are many projects on the lake for water quality improvement. Some by the village, some private. The Conservancy is getting more involved. So a number of very good things are happening on the lake. One of the things that I was actually hoping we could move forward tonight, but it doesn't sound as though there's the urgency to do that. I do have some draft conditions in mind, and I think that the comment about the noise, I did see in the cut sheets for the aerators and the compressors, Appendix F identifies a noise dampening kit that can be fitted on the compressors. And I think that would be a good idea to include, and if there is data to support the noise levels, that would certainly be helpful. We did discuss this at work session, and there were a number of comments that I did speak with Charlie about. After that work session, those appear to have been addressed in a submission that's dated today that has not been officially submitted to the building department office. I see it on the table there, and it's dated October 24th. And they were to provide a freestanding report so that if there is a permit, it could reference the report, and that would have all the figures attached and just make it a little cleaner. Making sure that there's no erosion or sedimentation in the area of the staging area, that's been addressed. The locations of the aerators has already been reviewed by the building department, and it's been determined that they're not a structure and that they would conform to FEMA requirements based on the closed circuitry of the units. That was one of the comments that we came up with at work session. And those were pretty much the areas that we had looked at. So, I think we're in a position to begin to talk about some permit conditions and, getting this moving as quickly as possible, again, depending on how this can fall into place. There's two issues to just discuss a little bit. If the cutting was done in the fall, that would remove the biomass before the decay period. And you had mentioned, Charlie, that if you missed this season, you might do it in the spring, but that's the period when water lilies are going to be removing nitrogen from the lake. So I just would want to have you think more about the seasonal aspects of it. My hope was to do it in the fall and then revisit it at the end of the summer, because you will have steady regrowth during the course of the year. And that's good, as I said, for nitrogen removal, fish habitat, shading, and some of the benefits that water lilies provide. And then remove it again in the fall, and you might go through that cycle for a number of years. And that would be good. That would disrupt the nitrogen cycle, as you said, and provide many benefits to the lake. But if you would look to cut in the spring, I think we'd want to think about that and see if we're losing an opportunity for nitrogen removal from plant growth, again, fish habitat and shading that would occur. So I would just ask you to think about that, since it looks like we may miss the fall season.
Right. Well, we have several things. One is that we do need to do it in the off-season. I don't really see a reason why we can't do it in the colder weather, unless there's an ice, problem. But I mean, we can do it as long as the weather permits, and we were certainly looking to do it this fall. So that is still our goal. I just have a couple other, hurdles. So,
Right.
So it is still our objective, and
you're using a weed harvester, so depending on, you're getting down, you're not going into the tubers and root zone, but you're getting any standing stalk that may be settling to the bottom.
Correct.
So it may still be possible to do it now.
Yeah.
And then what I'd recommend, and I talked about this with Ed Warner, and I think the trustees are kind of going in the same direction, is you requested a 5-year permit. And I think that concept is good, but we may be able to learn from the first year. In other words, if you were to be able to do a cutting this fall, we see what happens over the course of the summer, and then you kind of prepare a report at that time on an annual basis. Then you said maybe 3 years, but I think you could look at it annually, because that's kind of what you recommended, was to see if you had 25% or more return, in which case you would recommend removal again. And if it's less than that, then you're probably okay for another season. So I think that revisiting it annually would make a lot of sense to me, and I think the trustees will probably go in that direction as well. And I don't think it delays anything, it just means we revisit it, learn from the past year, and then tune up the program as appropriate based on those observations.
So we provide a summary of our findings and notify you of our recommendation and
Yes.
seek a...
And I have some almost an outline for that report, what would be appropriate to include in that.
How close are you with the town? I mean, you close to getting approval through the town?
I mean, I would say we're on the next meeting, docket, but I don't, they haven't told me specifically. So last I spoke with them, it was under their environmental department's review, and they were supposed to let me know when to come in. So I think we've communicated multiple times with the town. I'd say at least 3 different occasions, so they certainly are informed. And it was their idea to stage the material on parking lot.
That's always nice.
So I thought that we would have been further along than we are right now, but we'll follow up tomorrow.
Do you know what their meeting schedule is?
I don't recall, but I'll check.
Also, is the installation of the compressors and aerators intended for this fall also, or would that be done in the spring? Is there a way to?
I would skip the winter. One less winter I thought would be
You
beneficial.
have less dissolved oxygen problems in the winter.
I just mean for permitting purposes, if
Yeah, well,
we
that's
can
kind of the seasonality.
separate this.
Because if the cutting was done, installation of the aerators in the spring would make sense to me. If it's not done, I almost feel like it might make sense to wait until next fall. So,
You know, we'll.
again, it's something for you to think
Right, we'll
about.
push, we would like to really push to get the plants removed so that we could install the aerators. I would propose to do it in the spring, but we do need the stalks cut down for one.
Right.
It'll just make the aerators that much more effective, just less, in the way for them to function.
What do we need for us to vote on this?
I don't know, we were just looking at noise and things like this, but it seems like you could cut it now for all anybody cared,
Yeah. I mean, I knew the urgency, and we certainly support beneficial projects for Lake Agawam. And I do have draft permit conditions that we could even discuss if you're so inclined.
So you'd have what, a decision for the next meeting, or is that?
I have something prepared to discuss tonight if, again, it's, a little bit late, but we're here, and
I mean, if we got it off our table here, then they just have to deal with the town, and then they could go, correct?
yes, this is, as Charlie said, this is, we've talked about this before, but Lake Agawam is a lake that the DEC turned over the freshwater wetland regulations to the village of Southampton many years ago. So a lot of the time, if it's trustees, lakes, and DEC permits, we don't really get involved with what's in the water body itself. But in this case, we are taking out Article 24 responsibility from the Environmental Conservation Law. So we're looking at this globally. It's not just the buffer area, which is what we usually look at. But as I said, I've had a lot of experience and a lot of conversations, and there's a good scientific body of information that would indicate why this is beneficial.
The next town session is November 4th.
So that,
It's certainly worth a
if you have
shot.
to wait
I
till
don't-
November 21st, that could make a difference.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we should get it off our
If
table.
we got it off our table, it might give the town a little impetus,
Yeah, you could go and say, look, you've got it.
We're all
With
for
your
it.
help.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it would be a shame if we delayed because of minutia and, noise things and stuff.
Well, I think we've looked at it carefully. I think your comments at the work session were really valuable, and I was able to communicate them to the applicant, and they have been addressed. And the rest, I think we can do with conditions. So if you want to take a few minutes now.
Sure.
I do.
I'm going to have Dan and Charlie kind of follow along, because if we're imposing conditions that aren't part of the project, I just want to make sure that the conditions can be met. You may have to share, because I have to...
That's okay.
I think I saved one.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if it's adopted, we just... Okay, so this describes the project, and it's pretty much per the project description and the narrative that was provided. This is also a little different. A lot of the time, this board deals with type 2 actions under seeker. So it's my opinion, I don't know if you looked at this, Charlie, but I believe it's an unlisted action. And there was a short EAF prepared and included with the package. So if any decision were to be made, and David will coach you on this as well, a negative declaration would have to be adopted, and that's been prepared as well. But the two dovetail. The reasons supporting the action are basically the same. So it just goes through a description that Agawam suffers from excess nutrients. The lake sediments contain nutrients. There are ongoing inputs to the lake, and that removal of the standing vegetation would remove stored nitrogen in the plants, and thus remove it from the lake before it dies off and decays. And that water lily is native to the lake. As I said, this was inventoried in 2007 and found to be beneficial in many ways, and that's why allowing regrowth is good. But you're also removing that mass if it's cut at the proper season. And then these are out of Charlie's narrative, but I'm fully in agreement with the four items A, B, C, D for the benefits of the project. And that's to remove excess nutrients, provide water circulation to disrupt the nitrogen cycle, increase dissolved oxygen, and remove odors from plant decay. So these are reasons supporting it. It would provide aeration of the lake. That's going to help dissolved oxygen. It would provide, we would provide that the town trustees will be reviewing this and also issuing a permit as a cross-reference. Again, it's an unlisted action, and it references our jurisdiction. So as far as special conditions, and there are a couple of things that I changed today because I just got this and it hasn't even been submitted yet officially. You should probably do that, Charlie. Submit your books. So I made the cross-outs to reference not the October 3rd submission, which we had at the work session, but this one. And that includes figures that show the project, the location of it, where the participating property owners are, where the compressors are, where the diffusers are, and where the staging area is. So one of the things that we did with the previous application here, as well as Wickapog Pond a couple of years ago, is issue it to individual property owners. And in this case, it makes sense, and Charlie was briefed on that at an earlier work session, I believe, with the village attorney. So that's why we have the 5 participating property owners.
Yes, we were requesting to do this in one, as a group. I did get all the forms signed by the participating owners so that we could act as their agent, but it would be difficult to do this on a homeowner by homeowner basis, this type of project.
Well, the permit, the way it's drafted, would be issued to the individual homeowners.
Oh, okay.
It references the tax map numbers and the addresses. The Lake Agawam Conservancy is a nonprofit organization, but I don't believe they could be a permittee. They're not responsible for those properties. It really is the individual owners. And that's how Wickapog Pond was handled in the past. So I think we're consistent there. David and I discussed this today, and I think that was the approach, but it's something that could be discussed if you have some other thoughts on that. I don't think Dan's introduced himself yet.
My name is Dan Galizio. I'm the executive director of the Lake Agawam Conservancy. And just number one, I wanted to thank Chick for all his help in getting us to this point under a very compressed time frame based on the seasonal nature of this. And thank you for hearing us tonight. We're happy to do whatever is necessary in order to address your concerns. If it's helpful, I'm sure the homeowners involved would also be willing to sign over their permitting authority to the Lake Agawam Conservancy, so there could be one entity applying for it as an agent for those homeowners, if that makes it simpler. But if it's easier just to go with what we have now, that's fine too. Just whatever we can do to help expedite it, and we really appreciate it.
I think that might, adding another layer of authorizations and whatnot at this stage, I think would just complicate things.
Again, just an offer, if it made
I
it simpler.
appreciate it.
That's fine too.
So I'm actually going to read number 2 because that's really what we're talking about, and this is the approach. The permit is issued to the individual owners at the addresses listed herein for the purpose of establishing compressor equipment on these properties, a power source, and extension of tubing to diffusers to be placed in Lake Agawam, subject to a town trustee's permit pursuant to condition number 3 below. I'm going to add a word. It says no vegetation, but I want to add no upland vegetation removal is authorized on any of the subject properties. So we recognize that buffers around Lake Agawam are important. I'm sure that each property can situate a very small compressor in an area where you don't have to clear vegetation, because we want to make sure that any buffer that's there remains intact.
Right.
So that's the reason for that sentence. Compressor installation shall be subject to condition number 4 below with respect to compliance with any applicable sections of village code. And David referenced that before. Water lily removal is authorized to occur, and this is what I want to discuss, if it's okay with you. Otherwise, we may want to look at the seasonality, as I said. But authorized to occur in the fall of 2019, subject to the conditions of this permit and the ability of the project sponsors to complete the project. The ZBA and environmental consultant shall be notified 48 hours in advance of any scheduled lily harvest work. And that was actually in the narrative, and that's good. The next one is the permittee shall submit letters of concurrence from neighbors adjoining Lake Agawam where water lily removal and installation of aerators are proposed, who are not listed as parties to this permit. So the reason for that, and that actually did come up at the work session as well, is you've got the 5 owners, but there's a couple of gaps, and there's going to be work taking place in front of those properties. I'm assuming they're all members of the Conservancy, and I'm assuming that a letter of concurrence would not be hard to get, because everybody wants to do the right thing here. But we just want to make sure that they're aware that work will be taking place, even though it's not their property, it's the trustees, but in front of their properties. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes. My only concern is what if we're unable to get a letter of concurrence because we can't get in touch with somebody, or just because they're not available or they don't respond? We're not entering onto anyone's property. We're not encroaching on anyone's property. We're only removing lilies from the water area of the lake. We've had a public meeting hosted by one of the property owners around the lake where everyone was invited.
Yes.
We've sent out notices to all the property owners around the lake. I don't know the exact number, but 55 in accordance with your standards. It's been posted. The properties along the lake have been posted with signage as required by your permit application. And there's been a public notice for this meeting. So we haven't received a single complaint from any of the property owners around the lake that aren't part of the permitting process. I would just ask for a little flexibility in the event we actually can't get into touch with somebody.
Well, I
It
think
doesn't
that
hold up the
you
permit.
do have approval for any property that you're going to go on where you're going to place a compressor.
Absolutely.
Correct.
You're
Absolutely.
covered. So
We're only talking about those couple
the
of
rest, you're in the water.
Yes.
Yeah, we're in the water. And the situation is, I believe 2 of the homes are in a sale situation. And there's been no communication or response from at least one of them. And we don't expect that entity to be comment at all. So
we're happy to reach out to them again and try to do whatever we can to make contact, that's addresses your concerns, because I recognize that concern. We don't want to do anything that's going to anger somebody along the lake either. We want to be a big, a partner to those individuals around the lake. But I just would ask if we could work on that language to make sure that it doesn't hold us up in the event we can't get in touch with one of those individuals.
maybe we could make an attempt to.
Addresses? Right?
We'll be happy to do certified mail.
Yeah, just talking with David that maybe just a certified mail notification to those owners.
And that was done.
It's done already, right?
It was done as a part of this application.
So that was 10 days prior. Diane made sure I knew that.
Well, sounds all
I mean,
right.
that's up to the board. I mean, the prior notice of the occurrence of the hearing versus notifying them that it's been approved. If
And the
the
work's
board
gonna
wants
take
the
place.
extra layer, of sending those notices,
We're happy to send them.
specifically saying that this has been approved, that's entirely up to the board.
All right. Can you preface it by saying congratulations? It's been
A little
approved.
gift card with it.
And a
like
donation envelope.
I said, the board's not authorizing any work on those particular properties, so
Right.
All right, so it sounds like that's agreeable all around. I'll work on that language with David for a certified mailing, but in concept, that seems like a good way to go.
Okay.
The next one is a town trustee's permit and any other applicable permit shall be obtained for the proposed project, including any necessary authorizations that may be required for the use of the staging area in the town trustees' parking area at the south end of Lake Agawam. So I assume that'll be addressed by the trustees' permit in one permit. The installation, and this is just referencing any possible village code, and it does, the key word here is applicable permits shall be obtained for the proposed project, including any, I'm sorry, I'm reading from the wrong one, shall conform with applicable zoning, fire, building, flood damage prevention, noise, stormwater and erosion control, and any other requirements of the village. I don't think anything applies, especially with the clarification that we have about the circuitry of the units. But I think it's probably good to reference that unless there's some objection to that. This is the one that deals with the report that we talked about. A water lily management report shall be prepared after the first year and submitted to the ZBA prior to subsequent water lily removal. The report shall detail the removal process, disposition of material, aerator operations, regrowth of the water lily during the growing season, percent of regrowth over the total area, and any additional relevant observations, and will include a comparison between the original area of water lilies surveyed in 2019 and regrowth areas. The report will provide a recommended course of action based on the findings of the report. If 25% of the water lily plants have grown back, then it is expected that a recommendation to remove water lilies will be made. And maybe we just say if more than 25%. That's consistent with the narrative, but it is somewhat new language.
We're okay with that.
You're okay? Good.
Could I,
How expensive is it, such a report?
Oh, in my opinion, well, Charlie's going to be the consultant. He's got staff, and they're going to be familiar with it and monitoring it. I don't think it's a tremendous cost.
No,
Okay.
I think it could be a brief letter report with some,
Yeah, this has, I think it's good to have the guidance here of just some of the
Yeah.
outline of what would be included, but it seems pretty simple.
we have a short narrative here, we'll do a short summary report.
Yeah. Our office might be, 4 or 5 hours or something like that, but you're going to be out there anyway. You're going to be monitoring the equipment. There is kind of a flow chart of the responsibilities and the operation and maintenance that's also in the narrative. So it dovetails with that, and this narrative would be part of the permit. So I think it all ties together.
could I
It
just
sounds
ask-
like that's agreeable? Go ahead.
We're absolutely agreeable. Just one clarification. Do you envision us coming back and us having to go through the application process with the notification, the public notice, public hearing again, or is it submitting a report for your review? If everything's in order with what we've already done, it would be renewed for another year?
I'm going to look at David a little bit here.
I would say
Tell you
it
our
would,
preference would be, if what has been done is contrary to the outlines of the original permit, we're more than happy to come back through that public hearing process and revisit the issue. But if we're continuing to simply do what was authorized in the first year, and it meets all of your environmental consultants' standards of review, I would hope that we wouldn't have to just go back through that entire public notice and certified mail and public hearing process, if it can be avoided.
Right, this is a 5-year, it's a 5-year permit.
right, I'm not sure if
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
if the board procedure even has a renewal process to it, or if it would have to be a new application.
I don't think we're looking at renewal. I think we just want to report on how successful this is year to year, how successful the project is progressing. Maybe after 3 years, they might, let's say you have to make an adjustment to your plan, and so I think at that point, you would have to come back to the board.
Absolutely not a problem.
You might say, we got to cut these 4 times a year, or
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
Sure, if there's a modification to the permit requirements, absolutely. That's not what I'm asking about. I'm only saying if we're in accordance with the permit and we're simply continuing to do the work that was originally authorized, and we're submitting the report, and there are no
Right, because
objections.
we want to know how successful,
Yeah, we're happy to do all of that.
You wouldn't have to go through the whole procedure
I
again.
just don't want to have to go through,
Well,
perfect, that's
if you
fine.
have to alter some methodology, I don't see why you shouldn't have some latitude anyway.
That's fine.
But what you still want is the 5-year permit with period, and what we're asking for is periodic reporting, first one at 1 year. I think that would,
Yeah, I guess it depends if you want to see it at a meeting. Do you want to report on it? And we could probably do it as a discussion item.
Right.
And then maybe, I don't know if there's just some clause where there would be discretion to require a permit or modify a condition.
Right, because I know
That's
at
thing I'm
the
having a
work
little trouble
session, the
with.
board was hesitant to give, a 5-year carte blanche for this permit without knowing what the effects will be
year to year.
in the short term.
the periodic.
I mean, if at this stage to get things done would be to give it a 1-year permit and with a renewal, provided that the conditions are substantially similar to what's been approved.
Or
Or to-
conversely, give them a 5-year permit with some opportunity for us to step in if it's making things worse. You know what I mean? In other words, they got a 5-year permit.
Understand the intent. I think maybe what David said would accomplish that.
I think if it has terms in there that the report and that Chick would be determining whether or not there's been a positive or negative impact from it, and they'd be able to revisit it if there's a negative impact.
How would you determine there's a negative impact?
Well, we're going to review the report, and
With all the
Charlie's
other-
group has good capabilities.
I guess if-
They're going to make recommendations based on the findings of that report.
If nothing grows back, then there wouldn't be any reason to go back out with a harvester. We would just be causing, whatever, no damage, I suppose. That would be the only thing I could think of, or,
We'll go back.
I
They'll
can't
be
imagine we'd be increasing algae or anything, we're not creating algae,
Right.
certainly.
And even if algae were increased, how are we going to pin it on just them?
We have done renewals, as I recall. I don't know what provision there is, but I think do the board
When
members?
the permit kind of ran out, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I know there's some precedent for that.
Right.
We would, I don't mean to interrupt, but we would be happy to come back and present the report on an annual basis and address any concerns that you might have, provided, again, that we didn't have to go through the cost of applying,
public knowledge on it.
notifying, and
Can we do it as a renewal, annual renewal?
Well, then they'd have to go through the whole process? I don't think we want them to have to go
No, we
through the
don't
whole
want
process
that.
again.
Right, right. I'm just trying to think of the right term. But, so a presentation, and then just if something needs to be modified, what do we do at that point?
What about those procedures where we extend? We're giving something for a year, and people come back, we're not done,
Yeah.
give us another 6 months, and we automatically do it.
Okay?
It-
Annual extension?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a report, a discussion item presentation, and an annual extension.
And then if there's something that has to be adjusted, you can adjust it with the extension.
Right, when you grant the extension.
Right,
So they would not have to go through the whole procedure again.
right.
That sounds very good. And I believe the village trustees did waive the fee, right? Or is that still pending? There's a request made to waive the fee.
Right.
they indicated we had to submit a separate request for that. We've done that,
Okay.
And we're waiting for a
We
determination.
submitted the
That-
request,
that's
and
actually
a
part
copy
of
of
the-
that is in the
Yeah,
permit also.
it's part of the package. Okay.
I would hope that they would do that.
I think we can work that language out. It would be a little bit different than what we have under number 7 here. But I think, again, we know the concept, and the language can be finalized very easily.
Yes.
There could be objections from the owners about noise and maintenance or something. We don't know.
Probably going to want to know that. Number 8 was water lily plant material shall be disposed of at an approved upland location to be identified and submitted to the ZBA Building Department office for record keeping. Good.
But we identified the location, didn't we?
No, I think that's what
Staging
Charlie's,
area.
the staging area, but not the
Ultimate
disposition.
disposal.
This is for water lily material shall be
This is the-
disposed.
okay.
There's a
This is the
staging area to
ultimate
dry it
disposal.
out, and it's got to be trucked out of there.
Agreed.
You have a dump.
9 is erosion.
I don't think the town has a dump.
Why don't they?
It's an option.
We would love for it to go there.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I'm hoping the town will
That'd be
allow
great.
us to dump it there.
That's the easiest thing for us.
9 is erosion control measures shall be used at the staging area to ensure that upland vegetation and/or sediment is not transported to Lake Agawam as a result of dewatering or material transport. Seems reasonable. Not sure anything's going to be needed. It just says,
We're happy.
you know,
Right, the area, the staging area has the bulkhead has a lip there.
lip there, yeah.
And there are some shrubs there. We would just have to either work around them or move them and put them back. So it, you know, we're committed to repairing any vegetation.
And that was in the report as well, so that'll be part of the permit. 10 is, and this I found in the cut sheet in appendix attachment F of the new submission, it does refer to a sound dampening kit option. So I think that this board would like that kit option to be fitted to the compressors.
Okay.
So that condition is compressors shall be equipped with sound dampening equipment to reduce noise pursuant to manufacturer's specifications and provided in attachment F of the permit application. And the final ones are pretty standard to all of our permits. So it's all equipment and worker and construction vehicles shall be parked on site. And I guess that should really refer to on the individual homeowner sites.
Why wouldn't they be able to park at the parking down at the?
I think that's
Yeah,
provided
that,
for in the
yeah.
second part.
Yeah.
Or at the town trustees parking area at the south end of Lake Agawam. 12 is noise, yeah, that's
think you
that's
mean-
standard referencing the village operational requirements in the
I
code.
think you mean 9 a.m. You're going to do it at night.
I can't tell you how many, never mind. That was a cut and paste. And then just removal of any debris dropping sediment that's on the road, working with the building department. It does reference Gin Lane and First Neck Lane. Gin Lane's probably the only one where that's going to be an issue. The compressors shouldn't be an issue at all. And any damage caused would be repaired. You'd be working with the building inspector on that. So those were the conditions that I thought kind of embodied what we talked about at the work session. Tries to anticipate things and avoid impacts. And I think they're reasonable conditions. And it sounds like we have concurrence from the applicant.
Yeah, I just, in number 2, based on what you were saying before, it seems like the language could be, tighter, because this is authorizing the water lily removal to occur in the fall, possibly the winter, but definitely not to be read as authorizing the water lily removal to occur later.
In the spring or summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you
Because
want to say fall or winter?
Yeah, and not the spring. I mean, otherwise it could be read, especially with the...
Or the summer. And
Right.
Charlie
especially
said
with
you
the
would never
follow-up
want to do it then
language.
anyway. So I think fall or winter.
Yeah, if you put only in the
Only.
fall or winter.
Yeah. Because it said, after the comma, it says, subject to the ability of the project sponsors to complete the project. So but I just wanted you to have more, clarity there that you're not authorizing it other than in the fall or winter.
Do you want to specify that, or do you think the language we,
No, I think the language here leaves you open to,
so specify not in spring or
Yeah.
summer?
yeah.
I think we'll just do that with a paren right after 2019.
The last thing we would want is to do it at a time when it's not beneficial.
Yeah,
So that's
of course,
the problem.
yeah.
However you want to clarify that is fine.
Thank you, Mark.
Dick, on the front it lists 6 property owners, but on the consent page it only lists 5. It doesn't have 472. Seeing as we have a history with 472,
You know, I'll tell you where I took that from. I took it from our notice,
Yeah.
the notice that was published.
Yeah, we thought we were going to have 6, and we only have 5.
So which
You haven't
one
got
is,
472. That's Fox.
Correct. Right, that's right.
so 472 is,
We don't have,
No, that's not
yet,
shown on here.
but
Not yet.
we didn't get a commitment yet. So if somebody wants to join on, I'm hopeful that we would be allowed to add another homeowner, because we could use more aerators, and it just means that each
Each one will
homeowner,
pay less.
yeah, each homeowner will pay less. They won't have to have as heavy an electrical load. So we would like to spread the wealth as much as
Get more
possible.
compressors that way, right?
Right.
Dan, did you just ask that question? Who,
What question?
about the 5 versus 6?
Me.
You did, I'm sorry, Ken.
How quickly they forget.
Where did you see that?
On the front, you got 6.
Well, there's-
Okay.
On the consent page, is only 5.
Well, you say, is that in the project description? Or it says,
On this one right here, on the front, it lists number 472.
right,
On the consent page, he's not listed.
got it.
The consent page is in here,
Yeah, so that was from our public notice.
this and this.
Right.
472 is out, is what you're saying?
This was what was in the public notice, and there may be more than one tax parcel, but that was right out of the public notice.
Yeah, the 472,
It
we
was.
weren't able to get that aerator commitment in writing to submit this. So
And
we're
they're
still
not
actually
shown on your,
hopeful.
they're not shown on your diagram.
They are not. It was just, at one point in time, we were trying to get them to commit, but we
Okay.
weren't able to get it.
How about if I just make sure it's consistent? And let
Yeah,
Chip-
And if they
Both
add
the
somebody
addresses and the tax map
further
numbers, so we've got
you know,
the,
December, January, I think that we don't have to rehear it. They can just be added to the list of people that have consented.
Thank you.
We are still
do that as some
proposing,
kind of an
the
amendment.
the 6 aerators is still accurate. The one
Right, there's
guy is
2 on one
committing
property.
2 because he's
2
got
on one property, all
he's
right.
got
Right.
one property.
Okay.
And that's why I was asking if that's where you saw it, if it was in the
No, I saw it
description.
on the front and on the consent page.
Right. So it is 6 aerators,
The
because
6
one
aerators-
property has 2.
It's just the 472 is, at this time, not in the permit.
Right.
Although I'm sure he would like the lilies removed, but yeah, committed to the aerators.
So I have the notes, you have a draft of the permit, we've made some amendments, the language can come together readily, and I guess you could entertain an action on this.
Oh, why
Got someone in the
not?
back of me wants to speak.
Any comment from what's left of the floor? No.
Not here for this, or you are here for this?
I'm here to listen to the whole thing.
Okay, good.
Why don't we? Yeah, why don't we just have a motion?
I have a motion.
Let's have a motion. Do the local
On the
motion.
application of case number 3058, Lake Agawam Conservancy, Lake Agawam, I move that we adopt the decision as written by our environmental consultant.
Is there
And amended at the
yeah, it's
meeting.
amendment, as amended.
a second?
As amended.
Is there a
I'll
s-
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Unanimous.
It's a big step forward for the lake.
Did you vote yes?
I did
On
vote yes.
behalf of the Conservancy, thank you very much for your
It's such a
time.
short time, why not?
Really appreciate all
Thank
the
you very much.
accommodation. Thank you.
Good luck. It's a good project, there's no reason to hold it up.
Good luck with the town.
Thank you.
What's happened to Captain's Neck Lane? Is that still up?
Chick, what's this Captain's Neck Lane, DEC, what is it?
It's
It's a
actually not
declaration of
DEC,
covenant.
right, it's declaration of covenant. When you said DEC before, that's not the environmental agency.
Oh, okay,
Declaration, so I
DEC
honestly
there.
don't know.
Can I
I
entertain,
don't have anything for that either.
okay.
can I entertain a motion to bring this meeting to a
exciting.
close?
I move we close the meeting of
That's excitement.
Second.
October 24th,
Thank you again.
2019.
Really appreciate it.
Second?
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Bye-bye. Closed. Done. Yeah,
When I have attended these meetings.
Can I have a motion to reopen the meeting of October 24th?
We never had them.
I move that we reopen the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this is to consider the negative declaration under seeker. It identifies the project description, the location, the reasons for the determination, which are consistent with the findings in the permit. And this would fulfill the board's obligation under seeker to look at the environmental impacts prior to taking an action.
Well, that sounds sober. Can we have a motion to accept the negative declaration?
I so move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We have a motion to adjourn the meeting of
We don't
October.
have to.
No,
We
we gotta
do
read
the
up.
permit now.
Oh, we have to
Redo the permit.
Right, we have
Yes.
to.
Okay.
Not yet, Charlie.
We have a motion to re-adopt the permit.
I move we adopt the permit for case number 3058 Lake Agawam Conservancy as submitted by our environmental consultant,
Is there a second?
as
With
amended.
amended.
As amended. Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good job, Chick.
Good catch.
Now you can close it.
Have a
Trying to keep
motion
me on my toes in the
close.
first meeting.
I move we close.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Heard it.
Opposed?